My wife, Sandy, and I recently moved into a housing development a half hour outside of the city. We set up most of our things, furniture and the like, though we still had boxes to unpack. When storing a few summer chairs and other less essential items in the large basement, I noticed an acrid smell that only worsened when it rained. Before moving in fully, I wanted to fix whatever mildew or animal remains that might be causing the issue. While Sandy was at work in her home office, I descended the creaky open stairs, wearing a dust mask and brandishing a spray bottle of bleach, like some antiseptic cowboy. The basement has no windows, mind you. It's just a four-cornered concrete space, empty aside from a few cardboard boxes of old items that I had carried down a week earlier. I began inspecting the concrete walls for mold spots or water damage, but I found no source of the foul odor. It was as standard and minimal as a basement could be, aside from the lack of windows. And then after a bit of following the scent trail, I found it. Underneath the stairs in the corner, where the two walls and floor met, was a slab of ever so slightly mismatched concrete. I stared at the rectangular seam in curious wonder. I realized there was likely a bursted pipe below that had been sloppily fixed by a previous owner. After living in the city for 15 years, I was used to landlords pulling quick and dirty fixes to avoid out-of-pocket work. This was our home now though, and I was determined to fully repair it before we settled in. As the afternoon faded into evening, Sandy was still shut in her study editing books. She's the breadwinner, so I went to work, donning my rattiest pair of jeans and a t-shirt that I had ruined when painting the rooms. I descended the creaky wooden stairs into the basement, ready to bust open the concrete rectangle below them. It turned out the concrete slab wasn't even sealed, and it lifted easily with my crowbar. I slid it aside with a rumble to reveal an old stone stairway descending down to a further level, a sub-basement. It looked ancient, much older than the rest of our house. Our home was estimated to be from the 1960s, but the cobbled rocks in the stairs descending into shadow looked to be a few hundred years old. I looked down into the darkness and then climbed back up the rickety wooden steps to my home. I headed into the garage, searched through unpacked boxes of tools before finding my flashlight. Curiosity grew as to what could possibly be down there. I was well aware that many people built fallout shelters in the 60s in preparation for a looming nuclear war. I first wondered if it could be one of those, but it clearly predated 20th century construction. My next guess was a hiding spot built to help the Underground Railroad. I had seen similar hidden spaces in old Quaker farmhouses to help hide runaway slaves, something that I respected greatly. Once I began my descent, however, I realized that this was neither of the aforementioned. My jaw hung open at the discovery. There was a room-by-room copy of the first story of our home in that hidden sub-basement. Every dividing stone wall and doorway was identically placed. I stared in awe when I realized the outer walls even held windows in the same locations. Warped, thick glass reflected my flashlight's beam. I approached one in amazement, staring at a worm squirming against a pane that seemed to barely hold in a wall of compacted dirt. I continued into the familiarly laid out abode, observing the ancient stone walls. Every wall, windowsill, and fixture was similarly placed as in our home up above. Yet everything was archaic and spooled with long-abandoned cobwebs. There were cast iron hinges on each of the petrified wooden doors. A thick layer of dust clung to every mantle and surface, which looked speckled and stained with centuries of use. The most bizarre of all was the fact that not only was the floor plan of our home above replicated, but every bit of furniture that we had moved in so far had an antique matching set. It was like a time-warped version of our home, down to the furniture itself. A pre-Victorian sofa sat in the exact location as ours, its threadbare cushions deflated from wear and decay. I nearly yelped when I saw a centipede wriggle out from a hole in the cushions. I glanced around to see a stained wooden chest from a bygone era, and the exact same locations as the cluster of cardboard boxes that lay unpacked up above. My flashlight's pale beam danced with motes of weightless dander as they illuminated the most notable difference. Though each piece of furniture was in place, the cold stone rooms were all devoid of lamps or even candles. I walked in onto the mirror version of our kitchen. Within, there was a mortar and pumice filled with a congealing black paste on a wooden countertop scarred with lines from a heavy blade. It was in the same location as the blender that I whir up smoothies in each morning. It was beyond coincidence. It was as if our place had been studied and recreated with furnishings and tools from another time. My heart pounded in my chest as paranoia built. I darted the circular flashlight beam through the shadows, which raced and jumped behind uneven tables and speckled jars of dried herbs. And then I noticed the dark wood of the front door. It was in the exact spot as our own. I approached it as curiosity brimmed. What could it even lead to? My pulse quickened. Everything felt wrong, like I was exploring some part of the world that was not meant to have been discovered. Some arcane place that had been hidden for centuries for good reason. I couldn't stop my legs from walking forward, or my twitchy hand reaching out though. The need to know what lay beyond that door was immeasurable. I grabbed the cast iron latch handle, pressing the cold metal mechanism down and hearing an echoing click. I then pulled it open, half expecting an avalanche of dirt to spill in over me. But only cold air met my face, and I had once sensed the open space before me. I aimed the flashlight's beam into the darkness and I felt a tremble in my bones. On the ground before me was a cobblestone pathway leading out into a vast limestone cavern. I aimed the flashlight upward to the roof, illuminating the long fangs of 1,000 stalactites sprawling out past where my light could penetrate. It looked endless. A massive cave system was hidden right beneath our home. And then I heard a sound. An echoing set of clicks from deep within the absolute blackness of a space with no light of its own. It was a familiar clicking, but not the drips of the limestone, nor the rattle of debris. My stomach squirmed as my mind made a connection that filled me with a bitter realization. It was the clicking of a tongue. I aimed the beam forward, reaching my arm out fully as if it would somehow light up the source. And it did reflect off of something. 2 gleaming circles from deep in the shadows. 2 eyes that were watching me from the cold tunnel. I backtracked slowly, praying my movement would be unnoticed. I tensed with each sound my sneakers made as I stepped back towards that strange, mirrored home below our basement. Then, fast approaching steps echoed as they loudened. The clicking sped up too, blending into a gravelly croak. Whoever was down there was racing towards me, and I ran. I raced back into the copied house and slammed shut the heavy door, which muffled the grating clicking that approached. I ran through the ancient home, only then noticing that the stains on each wooden surface were dark and spattered. Each wooden counter was textured with nicks and grooves reminiscent of a cutting board. I raced towards the stairwell, turning back at the sound of an explosive bang as the heavy front door was flung open, and I caught a glimpse of something that I could have mistaken for a man had I not held that beam which drew features from the shadows. Milky white eyes and a gaping mouth far too large, similar to the unhinged jaws of a feeding snake. It wore clothes reminiscent of early North American settlers, Puritan or maybe Pilgrim, something that belonged in colonial times. It wore a heavily stained and exaggeratedly large collar, more like a ruff, and matching cuffs caked black with filth. The fingers were too long and swollen at each knobby knuckle. Those eager digits extended like Alaskan crab legs as they reached towards me. My heart pounded and iced over in dread as I climbed the stairwell back up into our basement. I slid the cement slab over the opening just as it came into view, the gaping mouth emitting a bassy clicking that vibrated my guts. I lay down on top of the cement slab of a trapdoor to keep it in, half expecting it to launch me up and off before those long fingers speared into and eviscerated me. I knew that I had to protect my wife, so I lay there, stiff as a board, ready to resist. And then the door above me creaked open. Sandy. I was about to yell up to her to get an overnight bag and to start the car. I expected that she would ask questions, but I would tell her we were in danger and that I would explain later. I was about to issue orders, but I closed my throat tight, swallowing the breath that might form the first word. I lay still as I could and hushed my breath as I watched, through the gaps in the wooden stairs, the tattered fabric of a long, antiquated dress swaying against filthy, buckled shoes. I lay there, making sure my phone was in silent mode, careful not to shift the keys in my pocket. I have been here for hours now, piecing things together, like how they might have copied the furniture placement of our home in order to learn it and easily navigate it without sight. I watched those strange shoes between the top two stairs, praying that they'll just retreat back inside to give me a window of time in which to escape. Praying they won't descend the 12 steps between us once my stomach finally rumbles from hunger, or the fetid stink from below finally causes me to cough. I just lie here in silence atop the cement trapdoor, listening to that awful sound that stopped me from speaking in the first place. That throaty clicking from up above. A playground on the west side of a small town. Pitch black and raining. The beautiful sound of silence. That's where it starts. That's where I met him. He jumped off the back of a bus and with the feeling of the rain pouring on him, he decided to take a stroll through the desert of a playground. With me just sitting on a bench and his sudden realization that someone other than himself was in this playground, he approached me. Didn't know anyone else loved to relax at this place at such a time, he said. I turned around, completely startled. There was a pause, no words spoken. It was obvious how nervous I was. I looked like I was about to pass out. He walked around the bench to appear in front of me. It's nice, isn't it? No one near, nothing but the sound of the wind flowing through your ears, and you can't see anything but the void of the world. Peaceful. I smiled and I asked him if he wanted to sit down, which he accepted. As nervous as I was, there was something about him, a feeling and presence that he gave off that somewhat calmed me and made me feel relaxed. I've never seen you here before. This is your first time relaxing on the spot, he asked calmly. He could tell how nervous I was, but at the same time, say how calming I was becoming. No, this is my first time at this playground. I usually don't sit around in an open area at night, but for some reason, I wanted to. I took a glance at him. He had a smile on his face as if the thought of someone else relaxing with him brought him joy. He raised his right hand in a swift motion, gave a thumbs up. He positioned himself on the bench while looking up at the sky, with nothing but a calm demeanor. He could tell that I was gazing at him with interest. You gonna join me or continue to stare at my awesome face? He said comically. Embarrassed, I did just that. It seemed like we sat and watched the night sky for hours. He was enjoying it and so was I. He rose and explained that it was time for him to leave. He took out a pen that was stashed in his pocket and grabbed my arm. He wrote an address on my arm and then with a smirk on his face said, You're a pretty cool guy. I haven't met many guys willing to sit on a bench with a stranger and gaze at the stars. I've got this cool place that I stay at. Come around tomorrow if you want to hang out. I was puzzled and he noticed. Don't worry, I'm not a weirdo or anything. You just seem like a unique individual, and I like to keep people like that close. There's not many left in the world. Your choice, though. He began to walk off while waving goodbye, but then I shouted, Wait, what's your name? He turned to me, paused and said in a monotone voice, I guess you'll have to become a good friend of mine to find out. The next day arrived, and as I approached the address that he had given me, he opened the door. He greeted me and invited me in. I was stunned at the building. It looked like a tractor trailer and a mansion that had a baby. He chuckled and then guided me throughout the house as to give me a tour. He then arrived at his bedroom. He motioned that I sit and relax, which I did. We spent roughly 3 hours chatting about ourselves, interest, thoughts about certain subjects, how we wanted to live our lives as 21-year-olds. Suddenly, he mentioned he had a cool surprise for me and he went into his closet. It was pitch black in there and he seemed to be struggling with what he was doing. He then comes out with what appeared to be a mask on. It was a red mask with a frowning expression which seemed to only cover up the right side of his face. I suddenly had an uneasy but interested expression on my face and asked him what it was. He said that it was a mask that he made of his own. He said it was a hobby of his. Though obviously uneasy, he was even more curious and he wanted to know more. He describes how he goes to this building late at night where all the supplies for making the mask lie. I expressed to him how cool it was and we spent the rest of the day coming up with names for our masked counterparts. He called himself Crater. Stupid, but I think it had a personal meaning to it. I couldn't come up with for one of my own, so he told me that he would think of one for me and tell me later. The days and months that followed were great. We hung out almost every day. It seemed like time was passing quickly. We would go to see a movie from time to time, eat at a fast food place on and off, and of course, our occasional stargazing at the playground. We even started opening up to each other more. We were both outcast in the small town of ours. He described how he was never really a people person, that he longed for a best friend but knew it was better if he stayed from having one. He described the loneliness that he felt, the pain it caused him and how he wanted it to stop. He even told me how if he ever did have a best friend, that he would want to guide him and be his eyes for the future. Me, on the other hand, was too shy to be anyone's friend. The way I saw the world, the way I acted is what people would call crazy. I wasn't the most emotionally stable person in the world. Being hurt and thrown away by the people you trusted does that to you. I decided it was better to just disappear into my own world. That way, I keep my sanity and no one is hurt. Me and him are similar in a lot of ways. We both long for that connection humans strive for, but chose to abandon it for our sanity. It was weird. He wore a mask to cope while I chose to live in my imagination of the world that I wanted. Well, there was one day we met to get something to eat. We hadn't talked for about a month. I sent him a message on the phone, but he never responded. It didn't bother me because I ended up getting really sick anyway. It was completely random and painful. I honestly felt like I was going to die. But then out of the blue, he sent me a text message that he wanted to meet up. When I arrived, I saw him standing at the entrance. He looked skinnier than usual, and for some reason, he had that mask in his hand. I wondered why he brought it, as he usually just wears it when he's in his house. I asked him as I was too curious not to. He said he just felt like bringing it for a good feeling. I would usually accept whatever answer he gave me, but I knew that something was going on. He was dependent on that mask. It was like his heart. He felt like he needed it to survive. I didn't want to put pressure on him, as it wasn't any of my business, but I asked him if something had happened that I could help out. He shrugged. "You're so worried about me. I don't know why you bother wasting your time." At that moment, I got a bit frustrated and I yelled at him. "Because you're my friend, idiot." A pause. A tear rolled down his left eye, and with a smirk on his face, he said, "Well, it looks like you have a bad taste in friends." We both chuckled and we went to go eat. I woke up to my phone ringing. With a nervous tone, my friend said to me, "Meet me at this address in 2 hours." I was confused, but then I received a text with the address. I found out it would take me an hour to arrive there. It was located on the outskirts of town. I got myself ready and I started on my way. By the time I had arrived there, my friend had already been sitting waiting for me. He had the mask again, but was wearing it this time. I didn't question it. I apologized to him for the wait and we started to head inside. The building we entered looked like an abandoned school with a name that I'd never heard before. As we walked inside, I questioned him why we were here, but he stayed silent. It was dark and the place smelled like wax. It made me nauseous. He pointed towards one of the hallways and told me to walk that way. Confused, I decided to go along with it. I figured it was some prank that he was going to pull on me, but as we walked further and further, nothing happened. I then stopped and turned to him. "Is this some prank?" I turned and noticed that he was shaking, as if he was about to faint. I quickly went to grab him in case he was going to fall, but the first step I took, he yelled for me to stay back. Worried, I didn't move. I asked him what was going on. "I guess I'm out of time then. I thought I could enjoy this a little longer," he said while tears fell from his eyes. I pleaded with him to tell me what was going on. What he told me, I wish that I had never heard it. He grabbed the mask on his face and proceeded to take it off. What he revealed was a decaying version of what his face used to look like. I was filled with terror. He then told me everything that I needed to know. He doesn't wear that mask as a hobby or to hide his pain. The mask is the source to relieve the pain. That it is a cursed mask that has the power to give you any reasonable thing you desire, but at a cost. How the wearer wants, the mask also wants. I asked him what he wanted so badly that he would use it. "Eternal friendship," he said softly. It immediately reminded me that he said he longed for someone he could guide and someone who could be the eyes for their future. And he was talking about me. He instantly fell to his knees and screamed about how the friendship we had was unreal, and if the mask wasn't involved, we would have never met. I stayed silent. I then asked him if I could get rid of the mask. He chuckled. "Don't you think I've tried that already? When you make a deal with this mask, there's no going back." He revealed that once the wearer gets what they desire, they must fulfill the mask's desire. "And what is that desire, and what happens if you don't fulfill it?" I said, getting impatient. "When you wear that mask, it reveals a history no one but the wearer knows about. It shows you events that you cannot comprehend without it. Whatever or whoever this mask is wants someone eliminated, and you're the person who's gonna help it." I didn't understand what he meant, but I decided not to question it until I got my other answer. "And what if you don't?" I said nervously. He told me that if the wearer doesn't follow the will of the mask, it will slowly corrupt the person until it has full control of his or her mind. And to top it off, it will eliminate the person's desire. I understood then. It all made sense. He continued. "I asked it to exchange me for you, but it won't. It won't let me go until I'm dead. I want it to end all of it." I stayed silent while he sobbed and then walked towards him. "And then I'll take this curse off your hands," I said seriously. He rose and jumped back in surprise. He told me to stop joking, but he knew by my facial expression that I was serious. He was speechless. "We aren't the making of a cursed mask, we're real. You took away my pain, and now it's time for me to return the favor," I said firmly. I shouted to the mask, making a deal. "I will follow your desire in exchange for my friends. I will do what you want as long as you want to keep me alive and as long as my friend is free from the curse." In an instant, the mask begins to glow bright and then everything is still. I open my eyes to find myself in my bed. The sun is out and I'm alone. I immediately try to call my friend, but no one picks up. I decided to head to his house, but when I arrive, it looks worn down and decayed. Confused, I head back home, and as I sit on my bed, I try to remember what happened. As I'm collecting my thoughts, I catch something in the corner of my room. The mask, but it was different. Rather than only half of it seeming to be complete, now it was with the right side frowning and the left side joyful. It's been about a month since then. It took me a while, but I finally put the mask on. He wasn't lying. This thing alone has a history. It holds the memories of different people who have all worn it and suffered because. A father, a veteran, a teenager. All who have made a deal with this mask and have been cursed in this endless journey. I plan to keep my end of the deal. Maybe if I do, these people can be free. Nobody likes being trapped in a curse. It won't be easy, but that doesn't matter in the end. It's weird though. Whenever I wear this mask, I feel comfort. I'm not alone. He's with me and he'll guide me. My friend, and thus I'll take on the name he gave me. Prapa.